This tough rhetoric from the Bush administration signal a possible move against Iran. Does it sound like the signals being sent before the war in Iraq? A key Democrat is getting that deja vu feeling all over again. He's making it part of his campaign for president. Joining us now from Capitol Hill, Connecticut Senator and Democratic presidential candidate Chris Dodd. Senator, thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks, Wolf.
You think it's the administration is trying to do now, set the stage for what it did then, go to war against Iran?
Well, you know, fool me once, your fault, fool me twice, my fault. When I saw Saturday night unnamed sources putting out information that the highest levels in Iran were orchestrating the use of these devices that were doing great damage to our men and women in uniform over there, I get a little skeptical about that kind of information, particularly when General Pace says today there's no information whatsoever that this is being orchestrated at the highest levels in Iran. That sort of drumbeat of putting out information to start to build the case. We've been down that road in the past. We learned just last week from the Inspector General at the Pentagon that Doug Fife and others there were cooking the books, making up this stuff to create a case for that resolution that was adopted 5 years ago. So I'm not the only one who's a little skeptical about this. No, I hear the administration. But you can't forgive me, you can't blame me, rather, for being a little uneasy when I hear these drum beats about Iran.
Here's the president speaking to C-SPAN yesterday, basically saying you and other Democrats are simply playing politics right now. Listen to the president.
I guess my reaction to all the noise about, you know, he wants to go to war is, first of all, I don't understand the tactics, and I guess I would say it's political. And on the other hand, I hope that the members of Congress, particularly in the opposition party, understand the grave danger of Iran having a nuclear weapon.
I suspect you agree with the second part of his statement, but you don't agree that the first part.
Well, who's the unnamed sources on Saturday night putting out information that had to be denied by some of the highest-ranking generals on Tuesday morning? I mean, there's something going on here. Why are those? Who's putting out that information, saying that this is being a decision made at the highest authorities in Iran? I saw those devices back in 2004, 3 years ago, at a full briefing in Baghdad by our military people. This is not news. We knew they were coming in from Iran. That's a serious problem.
What was news, Senator, was when these briefers in Baghdad and our Michael Ware was on the scene, when they came out and they said these devices, these very sophisticated explosive devices, have killed 170 American troops over the past couple of years in Iraq. That's a lot of dead Americans. If, in fact, the Iranian government is responsible for that, that's huge.
Well, I agree if that's the case, but General Pace said this morning they have no evidence whatsoever. It's coming from the highest ranks of the Iranian government. That's the point here. We all knew about these problems coming in. They're serious. They're doing great damage to our troops. We ought to do everything we can to stop it. But the suggestion this is all being orchestrated about the highest levels in Iran, there's no evidence of that, Will. That's my concern with this.
These briefers, we're told, were U.S. military personnel, somebody from Defense Intelligence, as well as a senior U.S. military officer. These weren't exactly political appointees, though, briefing reporters. These are parts of the U.S. military.
No, we're not making the distinction here. This is a serious problem. These devices are causing us great harm. The question is whether or not this is being orchestrated at the highest levels. Now, clearly, look, the president wants to shift the argument if he can. He's not listening to Congress. He's not listening to the American people. Didn't listen to Baker and Hamilton. He's going his own way to escalate the war on the ground in Iraq. We know that today with the surge of troops in Baghdad. That's a major problem. There are those of us up here who think we ought to be heading in a different direction. We ought to be talking about redeploying those troops out of these densely populated urban areas. Let them do the training, let them do the border security, let them deal with counterinsurgency efforts, but let's move in a different direction. This policy is failing. We're asked to be a referee in a civil war to which there's no military solution. The escalation of this militarily is doing us great damage.
You've said you want to use the power of the purse and stop the funding.
Well, my view is, look, at this point here, I wish the president would change his mind on this. That's not going to happen, apparently. So he's not going to change his mind, then Congress has to act. So I would want to argue for or author legislation that would reduce funding to allow for the redeployment of forces, to put some pressure on the administration to change its policies and do it in a way that would allow adequate time for these troops to be repositioned within Iraq and take them out of Iraq, to redirect funding to support efforts in Afghanistan, for veterans' benefits, to rebuild our military. But clearly, if the president doesn't act, then Congress has got to act responsibly. And if that's the only thing we can do by reducing the funding to create a change there, then I'm for it.
One of your Democratic rivals for the presidential nomination, Senator Hillary Clinton, says she refuses to say she made a mistake when she voted for the resolution authorizing the war in Iraq. She also won't apologize. You've acknowledged you made a mistake. You've apologized. You have a problem with her refusing to say what you and Senator Edwards and others who voted for the resolution have said?
No, listen, first, Senator Clinton's got her own. She's explaining what she feels is the right course of action to follow. And it's interesting to talk about what happened 5 years ago, and it's important. I don't minimize it. But most people will want to talk about where we go from here. How do we get a change in this policy that is costing us so dearly in human life, our treasury, and also our reputation around the world? So while it's an interesting discussion, and one certainly we ought to have, I think most people want to know where we're going from here. And I think Hillary Clinton has some good ideas on how to do that. That's where the focus of the debate ought to be.
And you're moving forward now with legislation to effectively do what as far as allegations that the U.S. engaged in torturing terror detainees? What are you trying to accomplish?
Well, Wolf, I think we made a major mistake last fall on the 60th anniversary of the Nuremberg verdicts, that we went off and basically eliminated habeas corpus in dealing with these detainees. We also decided we're no longer going to live by the Geneva Convention on major issues here, and again, to allow evidence that was accumulated through torture and coercion to be used in these cases. I think that was a major step back. At Nuremberg, we said we're different. We believe in the rule of law. And when I watch my government, my Congress, walk away from these principles, I get very worried about it. So I've offered legislation today with Bob Menendez and Pat Leahy and Russ Feingold that says we're going to restore habeas corpus, we're going to live up to the Geneva Conventions, and we're not going to allow evidence that we acquire through torture. That's to protect our troops. When you walk away from the Geneva Convention, you put every American serviceman and woman, they're in jeopardy if they're captured by the enemy. We need to build those relationships around the world. We need to restore habeas corpus. That's who we are as a people. That's what makes us different. My hope is my colleagues will support that.
All right, Senator Dodd, thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks, Wolf.
All right, Senator